Turning now to a high-stakes summit between two of the world's most powerful nations, which could have major implications for the war in Ukraine. China's President Xi Jinping is in Russia for a state visit. He's expected to sit down with Russian President Vladimir Putin for a meeting that will be closely watched by the United States. Over the weekend, Putin visited Crimea and the Russian-occupied city of Mariupol in a show of defiance, days after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for him over the deportation of Ukrainian children. Moscow denies the charges. Writing in a Chinese newspaper, Putin welcomed Xi's, quote, willingness to play a constructive role in resolving the crisis, calling him a good old friend. NBC News foreign correspondent Janis Mackey Frayer is with us from Beijing, and we're also joined by NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli. Good morning to you both. Janis, let's start with you. President Xi also wrote an article in Russian media ahead of his visit. What's the message for Putin when it comes to the war?
Well, in this article, Xi Jinping called for pragmatism on Ukraine. He pushed China's 12-point proposal, which has been largely dismissed by the West, and also talked of a world that was threatened by hegemony, despotism, and bullying. Quote, there is no universal model of government, and there is no world order where the decisive word belongs to a single country. Xi is talking, of course, not about Russia and its war in Ukraine, but about the United States. This will be closely watched, as you say, and also very highly scrutinized. These two men consider themselves good friends. They've met more than 40 times. But the China-Russia relationship itself is largely unsentimental. It relies on trade and also on strategic opportunity, in that both of them find some common ground in their opposition to the U.S. and American foreign policy. But that Xi Jinping, the leader of a powerful country in the world, would even visit Moscow at a time when the war in Ukraine is raging, is going to be seen as a huge symbolic victory for Vladimir Putin.
Mike, what's the reaction in Washington to this symbolic meeting, as Janis just said? How is the White House viewing it?
Well, what we've been hearing from administration officials, obviously there's concern about what they expect, but also where there's some uncertainty about this meeting. Let's start there. The biggest question heading into this meeting is whether China might be willing to do more to both shore up Russia economically at a time when we've seen, obviously, strong Western sanctions against Russia. Well, will they go further in providing lethal aid to Russia in support of their fight against Ukraine? But then where there's an expectation, and White House officials have been working hard to sort of pre-butt this, is the idea that China is going to again try to play the role of peacekeeper here, promoting the idea of a ceasefire. You heard John Kirby from the National Security Council really responding to that ahead of this over the weekend. Take a listen.
There's no question that both China and Russia, and this is right out in the national security strategy, are two countries that are chafing against this international rules-based order. If, coming out of this meeting, there's some sort of call for a ceasefire, well, that's just going to be unacceptable, because all that's going to do, Mike, is ratify Russia's conquest to date. All that's going to do is give Mr. Putin more time to refit, retrain, reman, and try to plan for renewed offensives at a time of his choosing.
We've talked about this so often, the idea that President Biden views our foreign policy as a contest between autocracies like China and Russia and of democracies like the United States. That's why we've seen the president really working to shore up those Western alliances of late. Last week, I was in San Diego when he was with the prime ministers of Australia and the United Kingdom announcing that nuclear submarine deal. And this week, President Biden will make his first trip to Canada. He's taking office, a key G7 and NATO member there as well.
And Janis, this visit comes after China secured a major diplomatic coup, brokering a deal to help restore ties between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Is China pushing to be more influential on the world stage? What is Beijing aiming to get out of this trip?
Well, as Mike mentioned, Chinese officials are framing Xi's visit as a trip for peace, though China's role as peacemaker in this dispute is debatable. The two men a year ago, just before Russia launched its invasion, declared a partnership with no limits. We've seen ties only deepen. Beijing has tried to straddle the issue because it doesn't want to risk straining ties with Putin. So China goes into this kind of with its hands tied, but with more leverage in Russia, considering the degree of economic dependence that Moscow has on Beijing these days. Xi Jinping is not likely to leave Moscow empty-handed, as they say, but then it's an issue of what happens with it. There is speculation he's supposed to have a phone call with President Zelensky later in the week. There's already been a phone conversation, a very rare one, between the foreign ministers of China and Ukraine. But the U.S. has already said it's opposed to anything that's going to ratify Russian conquest. Russia has said that it's not going to agree to anything that doesn't include territory that it already controls. And Ukraine's government is saying that it's not going to agree to any sort of concessions. So it's unclear what Xi Jinping is going to come up with. It will certainly probably fall short of any meaningful settlement.
And Mike, we understand that the White House is trying to soften its tone on China ahead of this meeting. That's according to current and former U.S. officials. Tell us a little bit about why that is and what NBC News has learned.
Well, President Biden has been consistent. He wants to see a relationship of competition, not conflict, between the United States and China. But we've been veering ever closer to conflict, especially in the wake of that Chinese spy balloon incident over U.S. soil. We saw the cancellation of that meeting between Secretary of State Tony Blinken and his Chinese counterpart in Beijing. So the U.S., with a real concern about what I mentioned earlier, the possibility of China providing lethal aid to Russia, has been softening its tone, trying to dial back the rhetoric a bit, because as one U.S. official told our colleagues Carol Lee and Courtney Kube, they don't want to put China in a box here where they feel they need to not show any weakness by not providing that aid. That being said, U.S. officials are also considering what potential sanctions they might impose on China if they go ahead with them.
All right, Janis and Mike, thank you both so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.